What if I told you that some of the most revolutionary inventions that shape our daily lives happened completely by accident? The sticky notes on your desk, the microwave heating your lunch, even the life-saving antibiotics in your medicine cabinet. None of these were supposed to exist. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of accidental discoveries that prove sometimes the best innovations come from the most unexpected moments. Our first story takes us to London, September 1928. Dr. Alexander Fleming, a somewhat absent-minded bacteriologist at St. Mary's Hospital, had just returned from a relaxing summer vacation in Scotland. But what he found in his laboratory would change medicine forever. Fleming had left several petri dishes containing Staphylococcus bacteria on his lab bench before his holiday. When he returned, he discovered something extraordinary. One of the dishes had been contaminated with a strange blue-green mold. Most scientists would have simply thrown it away and started over. But Fleming was curious. He noticed something remarkable. Wherever this mold was growing, the deadly bacteria around it had completely disappeared. The mold was essentially creating a bacteria-free zone around itself. Fleming later identified this mold as Penicillium notatum, and the substance it produced became known as penicillin. This accidental discovery became the world's first antibiotic, revolutionizing medicine and saving countless millions of lives. Fleming himself once said, "I did not invent penicillin, nature did that. I only discovered it by accident." Fast forward to 1945. World War II is ending, and Percy Spencer, a self-taught engineer at Raytheon, is working on improving radar technology that helped win the war. Spencer was testing a military-grade magnetron, a device that generates microwaves for radar systems. On this particular day, Spencer had a chocolate bar in his pocket, probably a Mr. Good bar or similar treat. As he stood near the active magnetron, he felt something strange. The chocolate bar in his pocket was melting, but not from body heat. It was actually cooking. Most people might have just thrown away the melted mess and moved on. But Spencer's curious mind kicked into overdrive. The next day, he brought popcorn kernels to the lab. He placed them near the magnetron and watched in amazement as they started popping. Then he tried an egg, and it exploded. Spencer realized he had stumbled upon an entirely new way to cook food using microwave radiation. His first prototype was a metal box with a magnetron attached. He called it the Radarange, and it was about the size of a refrigerator and cost $5,000. That's about $75,000 in today's money. Today, over 90% of American households own a microwave oven, all because Percy Spencer was curious about a melted chocolate bar. Sometimes the best ideas come from the most mundane activities. In 1941, Swiss engineer Georges de Mestral decided to take his dog for a nice walk through the countryside. It seemed like a perfectly ordinary day until they returned home. Both de Mestral and his dog were covered in burrs, those annoying sticky seed pods that seem to attach themselves to everything. While most of us would simply pick them off and forget about it, de Mestral was fascinated. He put one of the burrs under a microscope and discovered an incredible natural design. Thousands of tiny hooks that would catch onto the loops in fabric and fur. This gave him a revolutionary idea. What if he could recreate this natural fastening system artificially? It took de Mestral nearly 8 years to perfect his design. He created 2 strips, one with tiny hooks, another with tiny loops. When pressed together, they formed an incredibly strong but easily removable bond. He named his invention Velcro, combining the French words velours, velvet, and crochet, hook. NASA adopted Velcro for space missions because it worked perfectly in zero gravity. Today, it's everywhere, from shoes and bags to medical devices and even artificial hearts. In 1968, 3M scientist Spencer Silver was trying to create the world's strongest adhesive. Instead, he accidentally created one of the weakest. His adhesive could stick to surfaces but could be easily removed without leaving residue. From a scientific standpoint, it was a complete failure. For years, Silver tried to find a use for his failed invention, but nobody at 3M was interested. The adhesive sat on a shelf, seemingly useless, until 1974 when Silver's colleague Art Fry had a moment of inspiration. Fry sang in his church choir and was frustrated that his bookmarks kept falling out of his hymnal during services. He remembered Silver's repositionable adhesive and thought, "What if I could make bookmarks that stick but don't damage the pages?" Fry coated paper with Silver's adhesive and created the first Post-it note. Initially, 3M was skeptical about the market for repositionable notes. They test-marketed them in 4 cities, and the response was lukewarm. But then they tried a different approach. They gave samples away for free. Once people actually used Post-it notes, they couldn't live without them. The product launched nationally in 1980 and became one of 3M's most successful products. Today, billions of Post-it notes are sold worldwide every year, all because of a glue that didn't work the way it was supposed to. November 8, 1895. German physicist Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen was working late in his laboratory at the University of Würzburg, experimenting with cathode rays in a darkened room. He was using a cathode ray tube covered with black cardboard to block out light. But something strange was happening across the room. A screen coated with fluorescent material was glowing mysteriously, even though no light should have been reaching it. Röntgen was puzzled. What could be causing this glow? He soon realized that invisible rays were being emitted from his cathode ray tube, rays that could pass through solid objects. He called them X-rays because their nature was unknown. To test his discovery, he asked his wife Anna to place her hand between the ray source and a photographic plate. The result was shocking. The first X-ray image ever taken, showing the bones in Anna's hand and her wedding ring floating like a ghost around her finger bones. Anna reportedly said, "I have seen my death," when she saw the image. Within months, X-rays revolutionized medicine. Doctors could finally see inside the human body without surgery. Röntgen won the first Nobel Prize in Physics in 1901 for his accidental discovery that opened up an entirely new field of medical diagnostics. Picture this. It's 1943, and naval engineer Richard James is working on sensitive instruments for battleships. He's trying to create springs that could keep delicate equipment stable during rough seas. While working at his desk, James accidentally knocked a prototype spring off a shelf. But instead of just hitting the floor, something magical happened. The spring seemed to walk end over end down a stack of books, across his desk, and onto the floor, moving in a mesmerizing wave-like motion. James was captivated. He spent the next 2 years perfecting the metallurgy and proportions to create the perfect walking spring. His wife Betty came up with the name Slinky, a Swedish word meaning sleek and sinuous. They borrowed $500 to manufacture 400 Slinkies and convinced Gimbel's department store in Philadelphia to let them demonstrate the toy during the 1945 Christmas shopping season. They weren't sure anyone would want to buy a simple spring. In just 90 minutes, they sold all 400 units. The Slinky became an instant sensation. The year was 1938. And Ruth Wakefield was preparing her famous butter cookies at the Toll House Inn in Massachusetts. She had been making these cookies for years, using her tried-and-true recipe that called for melted chocolate mixed into the dough. But on this particular day, Ruth ran out of her usual baker's chocolate. In a moment of improvisation, she grabbed a bar of semi-sweet chocolate from Nestlé, broke it into small pieces, and mixed the chunks directly into her cookie dough. Ruth assumed the chocolate pieces would melt and spread evenly throughout the cookies during baking, just like her regular recipe. But when she opened the oven door, she got a delicious surprise. The chocolate had retained its shape, creating little pockets of melted chocolate throughout the cookie. The guests at the Toll House Inn went absolutely crazy for these new chocolate crunch cookies. Word spread quickly, and Nestle noticed that sales of their semi-sweet chocolate bars were skyrocketing in the Massachusetts area. Nestle approached Ruth and made a deal. They would print her recipe on their chocolate bar packaging in exchange for a lifetime supply of chocolate. Ruth agreed, and the Nestle Toll House cookie was born. During World War II, America faced a critical rubber shortage. The military desperately needed synthetic rubber for everything from boots to airplane tires. The government recruited scientists across the country to create a synthetic substitute. At General Electric's laboratory in Connecticut, engineer James Wright was experimenting with different chemical combinations. In 1943, he mixed boric acid with silicone oil, hoping to create a strong, durable rubber substitute. What he got instead was a complete disaster, at least from a military perspective. The substance was bouncy, stretchy, and could transfer images from newspapers, but it was absolutely useless as rubber. It couldn't hold its shape, had no practical applications, and seemed like nothing more than an expensive laboratory curiosity. The military rejected Wright's creation, and it sat unused for years. But in 1949, toy store owner Ruth Vollgatter saw potential in this strange substance. She packaged it in plastic eggs and sold it as a novelty item called Silly Putty. The timing was perfect. Adults, stressed from the war years, found the putty strangely therapeutic. Children loved its unique properties. It could stretch, bounce, break cleanly, and pick up comic strip images. When the Korean War broke out, soldiers carried Silly Putty to relieve stress and even used it to secure loose equipment. These incredible stories remind us that innovation often comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the greatest discoveries happen when we're curious enough to investigate our failures, observant enough to notice the unusual, and brave enough to see potential where others see problems. The next time something doesn't go according to plan in your life, remember these accidental inventors. Your mistake might just be the next world-changing discovery waiting to happen. What accidental discoveries have shaped your life? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories of human ingenuity.